To the citizens of the Vonros Empire, there was nothing quite like the nights when not a cloud lay plastered in the sky and various stars lay dotted about like points on a map. For many, the stars were a representation of the young empire, an array of unique individuals who would guide the continent of Zespor into a new era, free from the influence of past transgressions. One such individual was a young man of 20, Lucian Faust. In the pale glow of the night, Lucian's blue-green eyes held a captivated gaze toward the stars, an expressionless frown forming at his lips.
Hey, Hywel. What do you think it'd be like to rule the world?
Though Lucian's vision never left the sky, the sound of his voice reached its audience. A second young man sat quietly next to him. The man chuckled slightly, though it was more towards the suddenness of such a loaded question rather than that of anything humorous. Garrad was the name of the second stargazer. His skin was smooth and fair, with obvious signs of a well-maintained appearance, which was complemented by sleek, dirty blonde hair that he wore down to his shoulders. Friendly brown eyes and a rather striking green coat underlined with violet completed his look. Even judging on appearance alone, it was plain to see that Garrad was a high-ranking royal through and through. Though, Garrad was not just a royal, he was the royal, a crown prince to be exact. The only heir to Empress Ch.1 and her husband Emperor Emrys, and first in line to one day rule the whole of it. Hywel glanced slightly in Lucian's direction, though admittedly his own gaze was much more entranced by the night sky as opposed to his friend's newfound philosophical sense.
That's quite the question, Lucian. Why ask it?
Dunno. Maybe because you seem like the best person to ask? I mean, you are a prince. You know better than anyone else I know.
Hywel smiled dryly and shook his head.
You're an idiot. You know that? I haven't even spent a day ruling yet. What could I possibly tell you?
Lucian shrugged and finally brought his eyes away from the sky and towards Hywel.
Not sure. But now that I think about it, even if you had, I don't think I could trust your word.
Why is that?
You don't have the mental capacity to do it with any sense.
Hywel raised an eyebrow and shrugged, mimicking Lucian's earlier action.
Well, that's to be expected. We idiots have to stick together, after all.
Ain't that the truth? A couple of idiots.
Hywel nodded and returned to a far-off star he'd been trying to gather his focus on. If he squinted, he swore he could see a figure dancing on its surface. Just had to squint a little.
Have you ever thought about it?
Thought about what? Ruling the world?
Yeah.
Hywel sighed and resigned himself to the fact that he wouldn't be confirming his suspicions of a celestial dancing man that night.
I guess. I mean, one day I'll be emperor. My parents are pretty adamant about spreading their influence, so I haven't got much doubt it'll be expected of me as well.
Hywel's mouth bore a smile, but for a split second something in his eyes looked off. Whether uncertainty, fear, or some other clouded emotion, it disappeared as quickly as it manifested, and Lucian was unable to pinpoint its true meaning.
I'm not against it, ruling over all of Zespor, I mean. Wouldn't that be something?
A toothy grin appeared on Hywel's face as his eyes began to sparkle with dreams of power.
Could you imagine me, Hywel Garrad, High Emperor of Zespor?
In the face of his friend's sudden outburst, Lucian broke into a laugh.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that. I imagine your head on a stake as the clergy of the Holy Trichotomy descends into chaos because you executed one of their precious gods.
Well, they should have prayed harder then.
Hywel and Lucian bantered back and forth, continuing to make a joke out of Hywel's plan of world domination. When he'd finally had enough of the jokes at his expense, Hywel directed the question back towards Lucian.
How about you? Would you take a shot at ruling the world?
Lucian shifted around a bit before rising to his feet and placing his hands on his hips.
Would I want to rule the world? Even if I got the chance,
Lucian knew his place. He may have been a noble, but he was a lesser noble. A noble with no ties to the royal family and of the merchant class. In other words, someone with no chance of achieving such a goal.
No, I don't think I would. Ignoring the fact that it'd be impossible, it'd probably be quite a hassle.
Yes, it probably would be quite the hassle, but then I ask once more, why ask the question? You obviously care about it somewhat, or you wouldn't have bothered asking me in the first place.
Oh, so it's a crime to have a deep thought while sitting on a roof?
Oh. I almost forgot we were up here.
Aren't you supposed to be a prince? You really need to pay better attention to your surroundings.
Well, I'm sorry. I was too busy answering some wannabe philosopher's question to pay much attention to where I had taken my seat.
Well, you didn't have to answer my question if you didn't want to.
Oh, sure. Like you didn't practically beg for me to answer.
What are you talking about? I didn't beg for anything.
Far too absorbed in their back and forth, the two friends failed to notice a third presence on the roof. The intruder crept up on them slowly and deliberately, as if they were planning their words with each step.
I think both of you need to pay better attention to your surroundings and realize that some of us are trying to sleep.
The two whirled around, startled by the invasion of their one-on-one debate. There, in the pale glow of the night, they stared right into the smug face of Lucian's sister, Ophelia. In Gia, the capital city of the Voneros Empire and the place where the Faust family made their home, few women could rival Ophelia Faust in terms of beauty. Her raven-black hair, eye-catching blue-green eyes, and pale skin matched that of her younger brother. But it was the way in which she carried herself by which she had captured the hearts of the masses. Her elegant dresses and gemstone-encrusted jewelry complemented her nicely as she walked through the merchant quarter, greeting each passerby with a warm smile and a friendly wave. Of course, that was all an act. For all her beauty, Ophelia Faust was perhaps best known for her skill with the sword and the adventuring work she had dedicated herself to in the past year. And well, to Lucian, it was all too clear that his sister's true personality was far closer to that of a cocky adventurer as opposed to the public's young beauty.
Why put so much emphasis on the word some?
Lucian shot toward Ophelia as he gave her an unimpressed glance.
You're acting like you didn't just sneak up through the window from the street yourself.
What?
See, if you spent time listening to our conversation rather than formulating your little one-liner, you would have heard properly that it was Hywel who wasn't paying attention. Not me.
Lucian shook his head as a near-perfect replica of his sister's smug grin broke across his face.
Oh dear, what a shame.
Shut up, Lucian.
Ophelia spat, scrunching up her face in an effort to prevent her own smile from returning. However, it was a losing battle, and soon both Faust siblings were chuckling at the other's wit. Their brief moment of sibling camaraderie was quickly shattered as a third laugh burst through their bubble.
It's true, though. I never saw you coming.
Ophelia's face dropped from a smile to a passive-aggressive smirk, and Lucian gave Hywel an exasperated glance. Momentarily unaware of the look shot his way, Hywel chuckled for a second more before he noticed his lack of support and tapered it off with an abrupt clearing of his throat.
Ugh, you shut up too, Hywel. I don't need your sympathy.
Yeah, no one asked for your input.
Hywel gave an overdramatic sigh and spun on his heels, turning his body from the others before folding his arms together in a fake pout.
Well then, on that execution-worthy remark, I think I'll be going.
Ophelia clasped her hands together and tilted her head in a cutesy manner toward the young prince. The voice that followed was as sweet as can be, but the words that accompanied them were anything but.
Dear, oh dear, is our fragile little prince unable to take not being the center of attention? How pathetic.
Hywel placed his hand on his head and reeled back for dramatic effect.
Indeed, miss. I am clearly pathetic. Oh, and what a shame it is! But I am still your prince, therefore I have but a simple request.
That being...
Carry me?
Ophelia folded her arms and peered at Hywel's still reeling figure. Suddenly, a trail of pink materialized on her cheeks as she smiled bashfully.
If that is what His Majesty wishes, I will make it true.
Wait, what?
Ophelia lunged at Hywel and wrapped her arms around him. The elder Faust sibling effortlessly tossed Hywel, who was over a head taller than her, off the roof, sending him crashing into a pile of hay below, much to the amusement of Lucian, who balked at the whole affair. As Hywel rose from the ground, plucking bits of hay from his clothes, Lucian and Ophelia climbed down from the roof and joined him.
Well, I was kidding before, but now I think I really will need you to carry me home. I haven't taken a fall like that since that last time at the windmill back when we were kids.
Speaking of, I had no idea you could still throw him around like that, Ophelia.
Ophelia's eyes sparkled with smugness as she shrugged her shoulders.
Not just him, you too. What do you think I've been training for all this time? I wasn't planning on fighting bandits, just throwing you two idiots off roofs.
Yeah, sure. Except if it was me, there wouldn't have been a pile of hay waiting to cushion my fall.
The trio, including Hywel this time, laughed heartily before the young man excused himself properly and bid the Fausts good night. With a bow, the young prince exited, straining his back in an attempt to disguise the very unprincely limp that now hindered his movement. When Lucian was sure Hywel had disappeared from his sight, he glanced toward Ophelia and gave her boot a small nudge with his own, grabbing her attention.
You need something, don't you? You wouldn't have come up here otherwise.
Ophelia nodded as all the joy from earlier seeped from the air. As her eyes met Lucian's, a pleading look began to form on her face.
It's Oswin. Again.
Lucian rubbed his head and grimaced.
Ugh, the same.
Ophelia nodded again.
I don't know what to do, Lucian. He's tried for months to get away from them, but they won't leave him alone. And of course, Mother and Father can't find out.
In total, there were 5 children of Jacob and Sapphira Faust. Ophelia, the eldest, was a year older than Lucian, who was 3 years older than the middle child, Elvira. Finally, there were the twins Ravenna and Oswin, who were 2 years younger than Elvira. Oswin Faust had recently been on a rebellious streak. From the ages of 12 to 14, the co-youngest of the Faust family had run with a local gang of street thugs, mostly comprised of urchins who often victimized the pockets of Giadia's merchants. It was a year ago when Lucian and Ophelia confronted their brother with the knowledge of his thieving. From that point on, he began to scale back his involvement with the gang, to the point where within a few months he'd cut all contact. Well, at least he thought he had. Unsurprisingly, considering the company he ran with, the gang saw a clear opportunity in Oswin's departure. It started with thinly veiled threats of silence, but soon morphed into full-on blackmail. If he didn't pay his monthly due, he'd be ratted out to everyone.
They've caused a lot of trouble for the merchant Lucian. He'd be thrown in the dungeons if his involvement was exposed. I doubt even Hywel could justify getting him released.
And that's not even mentioning what it would do to Mother and Father.
Right. And even if he does pay, eventually, it would lead to the exact same conclusion. He's only 15. He doesn't have much money to begin with.
Lucian watched as Ophelia twirled her finger through her hair. It was a nervous habit both the elder Faust siblings had picked up, though from the way her eyes clouded with uncertainty, it would have been clear to even a common passerby that she was quite uneasy. Lucian knew his face held the same look. For the two of them, their family was their life, and they would do anything to keep them safe. So, for something to threaten that way of life, it was a threat to their very way of being. The pair stood silently, pondering the situation.
This has gotta be resolved soon. Oswin can only do so much on his own, but getting involved with thieves? That's just not my thing. Ophelia would be a much better choice to take care of this, but...
After some time, it was Lucian who spoke, having collected his thoughts and firmly grasped the situation at hand.
So, in summary, he either gets thrown in jail, gets attacked by angry merchants, or...
Someone takes care of it.
Noticing the resolve in her voice, Lucian frowned and shuffled slightly in place. He knew very well what Ophelia was implying.
You can't do it, yeah? Because of the guild rules? So, I guess it has to be me.
The guild rules. It was the reason this situation was so complicated. According to the rules of the Giadia Adventuring Guild, one was not allowed to take on a job without first getting it approved by the guildmaster. The problem was, per Ophelia, the class requirement for the task of taking out the merchant quarter thieves was too high for her. Lucian didn't know too much about adventuring class requirements, but he did know that if Ophelia went and did a job behind the guild's back, she'd be barred from taking jobs ever again.
I'm sorry, Lucian. I tried everything I could to convince them to let me take the job, but they wouldn't budge. If circumstances were different, I'd just do it anyway, but you and I both know what would happen if I got kicked from the guild.
Ophelia spoke the truth. If his elder sister was forced out of her adventuring work, it was all too likely that she'd be re-entered as the heir to the Faust business. The only reason Lucian was in position to inherit the title in the first place was because once she had finalized her position as an adventurer, she adamantly told their parents she had no interest in carrying on the family legacy. Their parents had been accepting then, but who's to say they wouldn't accept her back with open arms if her situation demanded it?
I'll take care of it. Just leave my bedroom window unlocked so I can get back in once I'm finished.
Really? You will?
Lucian cracked his fingers and took a deep breath.
I think I've had just about enough of this mess.
Ophelia smiled and nodded in agreement.
I'll be sure to leave your window unlocked. Good luck, Lucian.